Good afternoon. My name is Mitchell Reese, and I'm president of Washington College. Welcome, everyone, to yet another beautiful day on the banks of the Chester River. We appreciate all of you being here to officially launch a project that our Center for Environment and Society and many partners at major universities, area schools, and state and federal agencies have been planning and developing for several years. We're especially pleased to have some very distinguished guests and friends of the college actively participating in today's program. The Honorable Martin O'Malley. Is the governor here? The governor will be joining us shortly. Rebecca Rimel, President and CEO of the Pew Charitable Trusts, and Pat Noonan, founder and chairman emeritus of the Conservation Fund and a founder of the Chestertown Conservancy. They will be more fully introduced later in the program, but I want to express on behalf of Washington College how very grateful we are that you've taken time from your very busy schedules to be with us today. Also participating in the program will be the chair of the Washington College Board of Visitors and Governors, Ed Nordberg, a member of the class of 1982, who is now the CEO of Wakefield Capital Management. And I want to recognize 3 honorary alumni who returned to their alma mater today to help us dedicate this exciting project. Will Baker, president of the Chesapeake Bay Foundation; Chad Holliday, former chair and CEO of DuPont and now chair of the Bank of America; and Jay Griswold, partner in Black Oak Associates, a property and investment management firm. More importantly, Jay is the father of a Washington College graduate and is the chair emeritus of our Board of Visitors and Governors. One additional alumnus who deserves special recognition is Matt Mullen, class of 1997. Washington College's very first environmental studies major, Matt is the Deputy Regional Director of the Environmental Defense Fund. He is a recipient of the college's Alumni Horizon Ribbon Award and provides outstanding leadership as the chair of the Center for Environment and Society's Advisory Board. Thank you, Matt. It was the pioneering architect and city planner, Daniel Burnham, who said, "Make no little plans. They have no magic to stir men's blood. Make big plans. Aim high and hope and work." The purpose of today's ceremony is to dedicate a big plan, a bold new program focused on the health of the Chester River. When fully realized, the observatory project we dedicate today will make the Chester the most understood and most studied waterway in North America, and probably in the world. Now that's a pretty big plan, but there's an even larger one that comes with it, and that is to create a model others can use to study waterways throughout the country and around the world. Big ideas, big plans. We all know that when it comes to the world we're leaving our children and grandchildren, we have no time for small ideas. We should have no patience for small plans. Some of you may not know that we are on a 5-acre plot that was once poisoned by decades of toxins left behind by storage facilities for farm chemicals and petroleum. When the college purchased the property in 2008, it comprised 2 EPA brownfield sites. Thanks to cleanup grants from the EPA and the Maryland Department of Environmental Protection, we were able to clean the toxaphene, dangerous metals, and other toxins from the soil. It was the first step in planning for a new, beautiful waterfront campus that will rise on this site. Our new waterfront campus will include offices for the Center for Environment and Society and classrooms for our expanded offerings in environmental sciences and studies. It will also greatly enhance our boathouse and the opportunities for sport and recreation on the river. A great riverfront presence is an important step toward our goal of making Washington College a national leader in environmental studies. On this site will rest the best liberal arts program in the country for the study of all aspects of the environment. Such leadership and stewardship begins here at home, on this river, this estuary, this Chesapeake Bay watershed. Environmental stewardship is built into a new strategic plan that will guide the college's progress for the next decade, and we are in the final planning stages of a comprehensive campaign that will fund this success. A key component of the funding campaign is already well underway. It is called the Endowment Campaign for the Center for Environment and Society. Its goal is to raise $6 million to ensure a secure future for CES programs, including its research vessels, the Chester River Field Research Center, the Foreman's Branch Bird Observatory, and the signature Chesapeake semester. I want to recognize two steadfast friends of the college, Harry Sears and John Valiant, who are serving as co-chairs of the CES Endowment Campaign. Their efforts received a big boost from the Hodson Trust when it issued a $1 million one-to-one challenge grant that will double all gifts to the CES endowment. We're confident that we can raise the final $350,000 of that $1 million challenge. Thank you, Harry and John, for so effectively leading this important campaign. We look forward to celebrating that $6 million mark in the very near future. I also want to take the time to thank Eileen Dickey, who is with us today, and the trustees of the Hodson Trust for making this challenge grant possible. Thank you, Eileen. I'm very pleased now to introduce Dr. John Seidel, the director of the Center for the Environment and Society.
Thank you, Mitchell. As President Reese has said, we're here to launch a very, very big plan. And what we're dedicating today is a little odd in the sense that it's not a physical structure as you might normally think. It's really an idea or a program, and I've been asked to explain just what that program is. Things like this typically start with crazy ideas. And so if we go back about 4 years ago, we had just finished up a wonderful high school program on the river here with kids doing geospatial technology and mapping. And the director of our GIS program, Stu Bruce, came into my office and he said, "John, I have a really big idea." And I perked up, and he followed that by saying, "I want to make the Chester River the best mapped river in the country." And I thought, you know, that's pretty ambitious. That's biting off a lot. And if it had been anybody else, I probably would have laughed. But if you know Stu Bruce, you know he's very tenacious. He makes things happen. And sure enough, he went to work on it. It's been a huge job, but he started it. And he's also built at the same time a world-class GIS facility for Washington College. Now, fast forward a couple of years. We had just completed a national search. We were looking for a deputy director for the Center for Environment and Society, and we hired Dr. Doug Levin from NOAA. And before Doug even started on the job, we had him to campus. We were talking about what the job would entail. And at one point during this conversation, he looked at me and he said, "You know, John, I have a really big idea." And at that point, the alarm bells went off, and I thought, okay, what next? And he continued that by saying, "I want to make the Chester River the best understood river in the country." Now, that's really ambitious, and that made me sit back in my chair. But within the first month that Doug was on campus, amazingly, I think he arrived on January 5th, and on January 11th, he pulled together a meeting, a day-long meeting, of people from about 22 different organizations, not just faculty from Washington College and our partners at the Chester River Association and other local groups, but he had folks from NOAA, from EPA, the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, NASA, the Maryland Department of Natural Resources, the University of Maryland, the University of Delaware, Rutgers, the U.S. Naval Academy, and then also corporations such as Hach and Northrop Grumman. And from the enthusiastic response that I saw that day, it was very, very clear to me, and I think to everybody else, that Doug was onto something big. Now, there's nothing like working with ambitious big picture people, but I have to tell you it's a little bit scary, too. It's kind of like walking out on a limb. But I took a little bit of comfort in the fact that if you look at Washington College's history, we've had a lot of association with big ideas. And I know that most of you know the history of the college. You know about our association with George Washington, our patron. So I won't go over that. But what you may not know is that back in the 1970s, the Center for Environment and Society itself actually emerged from a long tradition of interest in environmental issues here. In the early 70s, Rogers C.B. Morton was widely recognized to have led the environmental movement that resulted in the adoption of the Clean Water Act. Mr. Morton was a congressman from Maryland's Eastern Shore, and he was a member of our Board of Visitors and Governors. And I believe that some people said that the CB in his middle names actually stood for Chesapeake Bay Morton. But it was a very, very big idea. That was followed in the 1990s, where with help from the Jesse Ball DuPont Fund, the Chesapeake Regional Studies concentration was launched. And then Matt Mullen, who was introduced earlier, had an epiphany on the back of our workboat out here on the river holding a rockfish. You got to ask him about that story sometime. And he actually got the college to launch an environmental studies major for the first time. And then in 1999, with support from Ted and Jennifer Stanley, Pamela Copeland and Louisa Dumling, Barbara and Tom Gale, and Lois and Cliff Schroeder, the center itself was created. And it's the support of generous people like those, with the hard work of an amazing faculty at the college, remarkable staff, and a terrific advisory board, that the center's become, I think, something pretty important to the life of the college, and we've reached a significant milestone today. So why are we doing this? If you look out at this river, it's beautiful. But lurking below the surface are a series of problems that are largely invisible. They're problems that extend from this tributary out into the bay that it feeds, despite the fact that it looks pretty good. The last State of the Bay report card, overall we achieved a C. In a college setting, that's not Dean's List, and that's not great. We're far away from meeting the goals that we've set for 2025. Nevertheless, we're making progress. A C is better than a D, so there is hope. For example, we've set a series of new targets and management practices in the form of acronyms like TMDLs and WIPs. A TMDL is a total maximum daily load, and essentially it's a pollution diet, a pollution budget that has been set for the Chesapeake Bay for all of its tributaries. WIPs are watershed implementation plans. They're mechanisms whereby every jurisdiction has to create a process for reaching those goals. But despite that, it's very clear that we've got a lot of work to do, and that's what this project is all about. We want to tackle this problem in our own watershed in a collaborative way. So if you look at this current approach to TMDLs and WIPs that offers such hope, it's extremely important to our future, but also to what we're trying to do right here. They set goals that are based on strong evidence. So it's the best science that we've got, and out of that you create models that are built on that data. And a model is essentially a schematic or a mock-up of the way we think this system works, whether it's just this river or whether it's the bay as a whole. And they're the best way we have of reasoning from discrete data points to the whole system. We hope these models are close to reality, but I think most of us agree that we could do better. A model that's based on only a few data points, widely spread apart, is never going to be quite as strong as a model based on lots of data points, very closely spaced together. That's essentially what we want to do. If we ask ourselves, how can we build better models? How can we achieve greater collaboration? How can we improve public awareness of what these problems are? This observatory is one approach. So what is that approach? So think with me about a vision. Envision a mapping program that maps this entire river in 3 dimensions, where we understand its contours below the surface of the water, where we not only understand those contours based on multi-beam and sonar data, where we also understand what that bottom is made up of, the soils, the sediments, through other classification systems. Imagine now that we extend that up onto the land. So through LIDAR, through aerial photography, satellite imagery, we begin to understand the topography and then also the habitats and the ecosystems that make up the rest of this watershed. Now if you take that mapping, that very detailed mapping that Stu Bruce envisioned, and we take Doug's part of this, we overlay that with a very dense, rich network of sensors and also people, a network that extends throughout the entire watershed. Obviously, it would include sensors like those that you see back here and over here, buoys that measure parameters of water quality in the river, but also on its tributaries, up creeks and streams, and even in ponds. Those are static points, so joining them, migrating, if you will, between them, would be autonomous vehicles. There's a drone, a self-propelled kayak back there, and another one that goes underwater that would provide data in between those gaps. And then visualize sensors on land where many of our problems start. Instruments in wells, for example, that measure water that goes onto the surface, measures its movement down into the soils, its movement through the soils, and eventually into the river. Think about even up in the air, where many of our problems migrate in from a great distance away. Then add in links to farmers, to homeowners, such as when they apply fertilizers to the ground, weather stations to monitor precipitation. And what we hope to be able to see is linkages in a way that we haven't really been able to see before between all of these various events and what we measure in the water. Now, many of these instruments that we're talking about, or at least some of them, are laid out in the tent behind us. And Doug, the mad genius behind this project, and some of our colleagues from other institutions will be happy to go through them with you after this ceremony. We have Dr. Art Trembanis from the University of Delaware here, Professor Joe Smith from the Naval Academy, Doug Wilson of Caribbean Wind, and a number of people from the Hawk Company as well. And they've brought together a remarkable array of tools. Now, so far we're talking about instruments and science. What about people? So imagine that we add on to this a system in which school kids, in fact, every school child in the watershed learns about this watershed and takes an active role in understanding what's happening. A curriculum in which they become scientific investigators exploring their school shed, in effect. So we have a network of schools where kids can build their own buoys, where they can launch them, where they can monitor that data. We actually, you may have seen a contingent of middle school students from Kent County Middle School troop in here a few minutes ago. This is one of the groups, among others, that is working on this. They're here with their teacher, Katie Hughes, and we're glad to have that kind of manpower supporting our effort. The data that they collect will go into a public portal. It can be seen and compared with what their peers are doing in other schools in this watershed, as well as beyond this river. Now imagine a curriculum in which each grade builds upon what they learned in the previous years, and where the applications, the instruments, the buoys get more sophisticated with each grade level. That's really what we're trying to achieve. Layer onto that yet one more network, one of organizations and people. This is a network in which multiple partners, each with its own strength, is working towards a common goal. Our partners include, and forgive me if I leave anybody out, the Chester River Association, Sultana and Echo Hill, which do such wonderful educational programs on the river, the Chesapeake Conservancy, Chesapeake Bay Foundation, universities such as the U.S. Naval Academy, University of Maryland, University of Delaware, and Rutgers, all of whom bring their own impressive expertise to bear, and where state and federal partners work with us. Here today we have representatives of NOAA, EPA, NASA, Maracus, which is the Middle Atlantic Regional Association of Coastal Ocean Observing Systems. That's a real mouthful, but there is a network of these systems. And then factor in the corporate world, companies that design and make this equipment, such as Hawk, Seabird. They are here along with Caribbean Wind, and they've been incredibly helpful partners. So if you have in your mind now this great network of multiple instruments, of multiple points, of multiple people and organizations, you've captured our vision. We truly believe that this river is small enough to be manageable. We can do this, but it's large enough to be meaningful. And if we can be successful here, it's a template that others can implement elsewhere. Once we do it, when we get it fully implemented, it'll provide a far better understanding of the river and its interconnected parts and the impacts of people. It's going to allow for accountability and transparency. We can see what's happening and we can pinpoint sources. It's going to allow anyone with an interconnection to see what's happening. We hope it'll provide a basis for ecotourism, for boaters coming up this river and others coming in from the outside, and link that with the wonderful historic resources in towns like Chestertown. It will have a central place in our schools, in our curriculum, and the results should help us better shape and implement effective policies. And then, of course, it's an amazing opportunity for our undergraduates at Washington College, which is something we're terrifically excited about. But the thing to keep in mind is this is a partnership. We're a small liberal arts college with big ideas, and we can't do it on our own. That's why it's so gratifying to see such a wonderful turnout today and to have such terrific partners. Thank you all very much for being here to dedicate this observatory. We absolutely cannot do it without you, so thank you. It's now my pleasure to introduce someone who really stands out among the many people who have worked so hard to protect our environmental resources, Patrick Noonan. Pat's the founder and chairman emeritus of the Conservation Fund. He's founder of the American Farmland Trust and a founder, board member, and former board chair of the Chesapeake Conservancy. He's also the past president of the Nature Conservancy. I'd say that that's already a pretty impressive and lasting legacy, but his fellow Marylanders are very glad that he didn't stop there. His newest creation, the Captain John Smith National Historic Trail is engaging thousands of visitors and students in the history, geography, and ecosystems of the Chesapeake Bay region, including this Chester River. Pat, would you come up and say a few words?
Thank you, John, President Reese, Board of Trustees of the college, distinguished guests. Special privilege to be here. Very honored to have Nellie and her wonderful husband, Truman, here to be recognized as well, I hope. More importantly, I'm pleased that our wonderful governor's here. Governor O'Malley, you've been a national leader at the state level and at the nation's level in the environment and technology, and you're an inspiration to all our Marylanders. We thank you very, very much. My friends, my work in conservation has taken me all across the country over the past 5 decades of effort. I've been in every state. I've worked in every state. I've bought 10, 12 million acres. It does not get any better than the Chesapeake. It is America's greatest national resource, and its great rivers are worthy of our best efforts. We have a great privilege to have a wonderful Senator Barbara Mikulski, who led the efforts to create the John Smith National Water Trail. Today, it's a 3,000-mile water trail. It is a national park, the longest national park in our nation, the longest historic trail in the world. It runs from Pennsylvania, New York, Maryland, Virginia, and Delaware. Tomorrow, it will have 400 access sites. It will have interpretive buoys across the watershed, and children of all ages and adults will use it for recreation, learning, and the watermen have been our greatest advocate. A great opportunity to utilize the great rivers of the Chesapeake and celebrate John Smith's voyages of discovery, which were quite remarkable in 1607, 1610. We saw his map on the old wall of National Geographic. We took that map from 1607, and from that we created a vision for a national trail. We took it to Congress. Mikulski led us. Today it's a national park, the first of its kind in the nation, and now plans are underway to protect this resource and protect these lands for conservation for a long time. We envisioned the John Smith Trail as a pathway for learning and for technology and innovation. Several years ago, the Chesapeake Conservancy worked with our partners, the Chesapeake Bay Foundation in Sultana and NOAA, along with Verizon, to construct 10 large buoys. These buoys are in place currently and collecting live environmental data throughout the watershed. They cost $400,000 a pop. That's a lot of money, my friends. But the educational content, the fact that the Maryland watermen are using them daily to learn about fisheries and aquatic animals has been critical to their success, and they're now being replicated in large ecosystems across the country. The age of technology is at hand for the environment, and you will see it more and more marrying the two most powerful enterprises we have in this nation, our capitalistic system and the environmental movement. And together with buoys and technology, our children will learn at young ages about the great outdoors. And so I laud the college for their efforts to create this Chester River Observatory system. It is a model for the Chester, but more importantly, it's going to be a model for every state in the watershed and every state in the nation, and I predict it'll go across the world. It is a remarkable story, what begins here today, and we should all be very proud for being part of it. My mother once told me, when you give a talk, son, this is what she told me my 8th grade graduation. I spoke at the graduation. She said, son, stand up tall to be seen, speak out to be heard, and keep it damn short to be appreciated. I think that's going to terminate my remarks, but I do want to again congratulate the college and the individuals behind this enterprise. It is very bold. The nation will be watching you. States will be watching you. The conservation field will be watching you, and the business community. It is an opportunity to take this great river, the Chester, to create a model of what we do here on the John Smith Trail, a 3,000-mile historic water trail, now a national park, akin to the Appalachian Trail. Same standing, same concepts for land conservation along its entire course over the next 2 decades. Full support from the administration and the current director of the Park Service. So we will blend this new national park, which is right here on the Chester River, with these interpretive buoys, and we will work with the college to take this buoy system, this interpretation education system, across the watershed to every school. Our lead partner is National Geographic, which I have the privilege of serving on the board, who began the idea of the John Smith Trail, who supports it, and I'm so pleased that Charlie Riggin is here today, who created the great maps. We just finished a new map at National Geographic. We have digitized all the shipwrecks in the Chesapeake. Anybody want to guess how many shipwrecks are in the Chesapeake? Over 2,400. We've now digitized that information. We've mapped it. We've collected it. Talk about that as an educational content. We met recently with the superintendent of the Naval Academy. Loves this data. for midshipmen to learn about their history. Half of those boats were sunk probably by the Navy. But the good story is technology is with us. It's going to drive conservation and environment. We're going to be better stewards because of it. And most importantly of all, our students, our children, will learn at a very young age. My friends, thank you very much.
Thank you, Pat. We have a couple of extra shipwrecks for you out there that were found not long ago. Thanks also for everything that you've done to protect our natural resources, and this John Smith Trail is a truly remarkable achievement. I'd now like to introduce Rebecca Rimel, who is President and CEO of the Pew Charitable Trusts. She's been a great friend of Washington College. As a Kent County neighbor and a former member of our Board of Visitors and Governors, Rebecca's generously shared her global perspective, her passion for measurable results, which is a theme here today, and her keen insights into what makes organizations effective. We appreciate her continuing counsel and her commitment to the college and the Eastern Shore. And welcome, Rebecca. Would you say a few words?
Well, those of you that live on the Western Shore or other places, you were probably worried that it was going to rain today, but the sun always shines on the Eastern Shore, the very best part of Maryland, many of us think, and my husband, Patrick Caldwell, and I are blessed to live right here in Kent County. I want to say just a few words, and your mother was a very wise woman, let me say. And I want to talk about leadership, and I particularly want to address my remarks to our younger colleagues. You can't come to Washington College and not think about leadership. What a courageous man George Washington was. And the highest calling has to be the call to public service. He answered that call, and we're fortunate enough today to have our governor who has answered that call repeatedly. So as we think about the difference that we can make, whether it's for the environment or serving this great nation, I want to talk just for a minute about some leaders I've been blessed to know, and many of them are here today, and starting with Pat. Pat has been a true leader, a true steward, and a great father of the environmental movement in this country, and shown great personal courage as well. He talked a lot about the John Smith Trail. I want to thank you particularly for having it come right in front of our house on the sassafras. We claim that Captain Smith landed in our front yard, and that's our story, and we're going to stick with it. But Pat has been a wonderful friend and a mentor to the environmental movement and to me for many years. I run an organization, the Pew Charitable Trust, that does a lot of work in the environment, in oceans, in places far around the globe, Palau, the Marianas Trench, places that you should go back and find on your map. But there's no place more important to us than the Chesapeake Bay. It is truly spectacular. You also have a great leader here at Washington College. Mitchell and Elizabeth have brought new energy, new enthusiasm, new vision, and new commitment to this great institution. And I think we all deserve, they deserve, and we should all give them a round of applause for their leadership. As I look at the Chester, there are many people here, or some I think from Philadelphia. There's a great institution, the Academy of Natural Sciences, that I've been fortunate enough to be affiliated with, and a wonderful woman who took me under her wing, a limnologist named Ruth Patrick. She was a consultant to the DuPont company. We lost her in her 90s just last year. And she kept talking about the Chester River, and she studied rivers all over the country, and she said there was none more special than the Chester. Of course, I listened attentively, because that's what you do when you're your age. But however, I never saw the river until we moved here, and you know what? She was a wise woman, and she was right. So for her mentorship, not only in showing the importance of leadership, but women and their role in the environmental movement, I will always be very much grateful. And I also have a very special mentor and friend here, Truman Semans, who I've known for over 2 decades. And Nellie, in your life, you're blessed and touched by some great friends, people that give you a leg up in life. And for all, Truman, that you have done for me, for the environmental movement, for so many other people, we are all very, very much in your debt and grateful. And our good governor. Pat was right. The governor of Maryland has shown courageous leadership on many, many issues. We've been fortunate to work with him on several, but I just want to mention one. It was a year ago that we were in a pretty tough discussions about trying to stop the overfishing of menhaden in the Chesapeake Bay. There was strong interest. We needed bold, courageous public sector leadership. And the governor showed that, and I just saw that last month, I believe, it is calculated that in just 1 year, there are more than 300 million menhaden in the Bay and in the Atlantic because of the actions that this coalition and the governor and others took. Now, you won't see menhaden on the menu at JR's or Lemon Leaf, probably, but it is, and it has been called the most important fish in the sea. Our whole ecosystem is dependent on it. So when you hear that you don't understand the role of politicians and policy making and saving the environment or protecting this great watershed, that's just not true. So for all of you who are considering your careers, maybe it'll be in the environment, maybe it'll be in science, but don't dismiss that maybe it'll be in serving your country as an elected or appointed official. So I'm delighted to be here, be part of this program. And Mitchell, congratulate you and John and everybody else here, Harry and so many others that have played a role in this very special day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rebecca. And now you all understand why we so appreciate her friendship and advice. It's now my honor and privilege to introduce Governor Martin O'Malley. As Maryland's top executive, he's established himself as a strong advocate for a healthier environment, demanding better stewardship of the state's natural resources, and that includes the Chesapeake Bay, obviously, as well as smarter policies for a more sustainable energy future. He's been a strong voice on the national stage as well, setting a high standard for other governors to follow. We've been fortunate enough to work with him in our Geographic Information Systems Lab, working with the Governor's Office of Crime Control and Prevention. And I can tell you that they are a very data-driven consumer. And they use that data to try and make the soundest decisions they possibly can. That spills over very forcefully into the environmental world, where the governor's leadership can be credited with saving the state's iconic blue crab population and making great progress in restoring our oyster population. He's led the state's efforts to implement the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, the nation's first market-based regulatory program to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And in 2009, he led the state's efforts to pass the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Plan, which is on track, remarkably, to reduce greenhouse gases fully 25% by the year 2020. Governor, we thank you for all of your strong leadership on behalf of the environment and for honoring us by being here today.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. John, thank you very, very much. And thank you all for the important life-saving and life-restoring work that you are engaged in. Each of you is here for a reason, and each of you is possessed of a tremendous power, and it is the power that emanates from your hearts that understand that in order for us to have a future, we have to appreciate the other living systems upon which our future depends. So I want to thank all of you for making this day possible. It would not be possible without your hard work and without your compassion and your follow-through. So thank you, President Reese, for your leadership of this great institution. It's a little kept secret that I have an ambition one day to be president of Washington College. And so I'm very, very jealous. President Reese, thank you for the great work that you do. And a little known fact, but really the tremendous work that they do in GIS here at Washington College has formed the basis for huge reductions in violent crime throughout our state. We depend on Washington State and the good work that's done through your university to provide the common platforms that towns and cities throughout our state and counties use in order to save lives and reduce crime. It's a big impact. Rebecca Rimel, thank you for not only your leadership of the Pew Charitable Trusts and what you've done to make this day possible, but for having the good sense to live on the eastern shore of Maryland. And I'm delighted to see so many friends here. Truman and Nellie Semans, who have been leading this administration forward every single day. Thank you for what you've done to preserve the beauty of this place of ours called Maryland. I also want to recognize the Sultana Foundation and its president, Drew McMullen, for the great work being done on environmental education. You set an example, and I was very pleased to lead the effort statewide in making environmental literacy a requirement for high school graduation. And the reason why I was a little tardy in arriving here today is because I just left Sandy Point State Park, where there must have been 400 young leaders of Maryland. We now have 468 green schools in our state, thanks to the good work that you and other leaders of your generation are doing throughout our state. And it was a mob scene, man. There was a lot of love for one another and a lot of love for the Bay. And because of your good work, I say this to the young people here, I am so pumped up and hopeful about our future and about our ability to preserve this beauty that all of you appreciate in your own hearts. So thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for what I know you will continue to do. We're very pleased to be able to invest as a people through that common platform of ours called our state, $500,000 to for the upcoming fiscal year towards the cost of this effort. And I want to recognize my good friend Pat Noonan, who is a tremendous Marylander and a great American. As the founder of the Conservation Fund about 30 years ago, Pat has led to the protection of over, get this, 7 million acres of land and water in every one of our 50 states. One person can make a difference, and you've done that, Pat. And many of you who are here today have partnered with us on the many, many acres of special lands like the Chino Farms that owned by your own Dr. Sears. He's also the father, Pat is of the Captain John Smith Historic Water Trail, which was mentioned earlier, and he continues to expand his leadership with the Chesapeake Conservancy. This new observatory is an exciting initiative. I've heard the words as I was listening here. And I'll just put the adjective intelligent in front of them. Intelligent networks, intelligent collaborations, all with the purpose of creating more and better actions, compassionate actions, mindful actions. That's what it's going to take. And technology can be a tremendous help to us in all of this. We have never before had the ability to track and to monitor and to measure the actions that we take as individuals and together as a community of caring people to restore and to protect the other living systems of this precious Chesapeake Bay watershed. And through that data-driven performance, we've led the other 5 states of the Chesapeake Bay watershed, as I see Will Baker nodding. That had never happened before. Many times governors would get together and we'd declare a 40-year hope. And none of us were really, very few of us were around 40 years later to measure whether or not that hope ever came true. But the difference between a dream and a goal, ladies and gentlemen, is a deadline. So now we have 2-year deadlines. We have benchmarks. We know whether or not we're doing more cover crops this year than we were doing last year, whether we're preserving more land or less, whether we're doing more buffers of streams or whether we're doing fewer. And if we can all make those graphs move in the right direction, then Mother Nature and God will kick in. And we will reach that healthy bay tipping point where all of the waters and streams of this Chesapeake Bay region are getting a little healthier every year. It won't happen by itself, but if we take action, Providence will take action too. You know, everything is theoretically impossible until it's done. And one could write a history of science, John Heinlein says, in reverse, by assembling the solemn pronouncements of the highest authority about what could not be done and could never happen. I want to thank all of you for believing that it can be done, for believing that together we can make it happen. And together we will, and together we must. Thank you for the honor of being here with you today.
Thank you, Governor O'Malley. I hope you'll return often as president or in any other capacity and monitor our progress as we develop these initiatives. When we are creating this Chester River Watershed Observatory, we're very aware of the fact that we're standing on the shoulders of a lot of visionaries, scientists, advocates, politicians, just common everyday citizens all of whom came before us. And I think it's important that we look backward to recognize the fact that what we're doing could not be done were it not for all of those people. We're also going to look back today, and I think it's proper that we do so, to recognize someone who has made a huge difference, a positive difference in the health of the Chesapeake Bay and other conservation challenges. And I'd like to ask Ed Nordberg, who is chair of our Board of Visitors and Governors, to come up here and help us inaugurate the college's Lifetime Achievement Award in Conservation.
Thank you, John. And I think you can tell from listening to John how thrilled we are to have him as the director for the Center for the Environment here at Washington College. And I'd also like to begin by thanking our special guests here today, the Governor. Thank you for your remarks. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for all your hard work on behalf of the state of Maryland and for the environment. Rebecca, always a pleasure. You will come back often, I know that. And we're thrilled to have you here today. And Pat, thank you for those kind words and for all the work you've done on behalf of the Chesapeake Bay and the environment around this country. And also to President Reese and Elizabeth, who really, since coming here, has really, I think, taken on this particular aspect of the college's growth and championed it. And it's been a pleasure to work with you in that regard. And John, I'm sure you'll second that. So we're pleased, very pleased that you've taken that role. Now I get to do something that is very unique, and it's one of the few things. Every once in a while I get to do some things as chairman of the board here that are truly special. And today is one of those. As John said, we here today are standing on the shoulders of those who've come before us. The work of confronting the environmental challenges that face our home waters often goes unsung. For decades, armies of passionate individuals have dedicated themselves to this task. They worked in the field, in the lab, in the boardroom, in the press room, tackling complex issues on every level. It's important to recognize that work and to acknowledge that we could not do what we do without the benefit of their efforts. Washington College and its Center for Environment and Society thought it fitting to honor the leaders of those dedicated armies. To that end, we've established the Lifetime Achievement Award in Conservation. Today is the first time this award will be conferred, and we could think of no one more deserving than one man who has done so much in so many ways for so long, and yet who keeps his remarkable leadership remarkably quiet. We hope he doesn't mind that we shout it out loud here today. We are honored to present the first Lifetime Achievement Award in Conservation to Truman T. Semans. I have a few more words here, Truman, so you can be reseated. A well-deserved ovation. Truman's connection to the Chesapeake is lifelong and intimate. Growing up on a family farm in St. Mary's County, he hunted and fished on a bay where oyster reefs were still broke the water's surface at low tide, where migratory birds still darkened the sky, and the shad and herring ran like living rivers. He also grew up in a deeply religious Catholic family, and those two threads of his life wove together to form a profound and personal sense of stewardship of the land, the water, and the wildlife that continues to inform his actions today. In the late 1960s, he was among those who were concerned enough about the Bay's future to conceive and form an independent organization that will look out for the Bay, represent its interests, and draw the public into the cause. That organization became the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, and Truman served on its board from 1973 through 1995, and then again between 1997 and 2005. He continues to serve on several of the CBF's executive committees. And that was only the beginning. He became, in the words of Pat Noonan, a catalyst for conservation action, bringing great leaders and supporters into the environmental movement. He facilitated complicated land deals that resulted in the Nature Conservancy's creation of the Warm Springs Mountain Preserve, over 9,000 acres of biologically diverse and unique habitat in western Virginia's Allegheny Highlands. He has worked extensively with the Chesapeake Conservancy and continues to offer his time, talent, and thoughtfulness through his work on the board of the Conservation Fund. He is a former board member of the Nature Conservancy of Virginia, the National Audubon Society, and Duke University's Nicholas School of the Environment. Perhaps most significantly, Truman was at the forefront of building bridges between the corporate world and the environmental movement. As early as the 1970s, he was a leader in financing pollution control equipment for industry to help meet the goals of the Clean Air and Clean Water Acts. As vice chairman of Brown Advisory, he has been instrumental in making that firm a world leader in sustainability investing. By spurring the powers of the economy, technology, the financial sectors, and corporate America to become part of the environmental solution, Truman has helped fundamentally transform how these parts of society operate. Because of this, we are realizing the full potential of the environmental movement that he helped fledge 50 years ago. He has been called a mentor, an inspiration, a quiet leader, an innovator, a pioneer in the field of sustainability, and a generous, joyful man who has never lost his love of the most humble elements of nature's fragile beauty. So, Truman, will you join me here at the lectern?
Yes.
It is our honor to award the Truman T. Semans, to Truman T. Semans, the Center for Environment and Society's first Lifetime Achievement Award. And we have a crystal ball here for you and a lovely inscription as well.
Oh,
Great. Thank you.
thank you ever so much. I'm glad of that. Thank you. Thank you.
You want us to hold on to this? Great to be here with you, my friend. You want us to hold on
Yeah.
before you close it? Do you want to say a few words?
Well, this is completely and utterly unexpected, and I'm flabbergasted, among other things, almost to silence, not quite. But my father told me when I was very young that no souls were saved after the first 5 moments. So, but again, Ed and Mitchell, John, and these dear friends of mine, this governor and I worked together to save 20 miles of waterfront and 5,000 acres that the Jesuits owned in St. Mary's County. He has been an unbelievably wonderful environmental governor. We all owe you a great debt of gratitude, Governor. And I'm a new boy to Washington College, but I'm enchanted by it. I think it's a great place, and I'm delighted to get this undeserved award, but I'll take it with gratitude. So I want to thank you all, and particularly thank my wife who makes all this possible. And it's great to be here. Thank you very, very much.
Truman, that's absolutely so well deserved. You are truly one of the quiet heroes of the environmental movement, and we so appreciate everything that you've done. I'd also like to take a moment to recognize your wife, Nellie. I know that behind every good man and good things you do, and I do every once in a while do a good thing, and there's a good woman that stands behind that. So we have to recognize Nellie, and also Truman Jr., who's clearly creating his own legacy in the field of conservation. What we're going to do now is to cut the ribbon to dedicate this watershed observatory. So what we'll do is it's stretched between 2 buoys here. They look like inverted trash cans, but they're actually very sophisticated instruments. Doug and his colleagues have managed to bring down the cost of some of these buoys from in the range of $50,000 to $70,000 to $5,000 to $7,000. It's really a remarkable achievement. And this is the first batch of 5 that will go into the river. So what we'd like to do is have the platform party come up and join us in cutting the ribbon.
Could everybody under 16 come up around? Come on, right behind us. Come on, all behind us, guys. All behind us. There we go. Come on up. Rimel, here's your scissors, pal. Counting down from 5, 4, 3,